Welcome to Speak, a platform where artisans can talk candidly about their work in the arts and also address some of the biggest issues in the creative community today. My name is Jennifer DiMarco. I'm a novelist, poet, playwright, musician, filmmaker, and core mechanic designer for games. Today I am speaking with Mark Robijn. Did I say it right, Mark?
Yes, you did.
All right. Mark is the author of the Johnny Apocalypse books and a children's book. What's the title of the children's book, Mark?
It's Moogie and the Peachtree Dragon.
Moogie and the Peachtree Dragon. And also, Mark has short stories published in The Mighty Pen and Unnerving Volume 2. Thank you for joining us on Speak, Mark.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. How did this all start for you? Tell us what we absolutely need to know about you before we begin.
Okay. I have lived all my life in Washington State and under the shadow of Mount Rainier. I've always been a sci-fi and a fantasy lover ever since I was back in junior high. I started out in junior high. My science teacher at that time, I was fortunate enough to go to a junior high where it was kind of like an alternative junior high where they got to try some different kind of learning methods.
Yeah.
And one of the methods was this teacher, Leo Christofferson, who he spelled his name .037, which was Leo upside down. He was like a mad scientist teacher, and he would, instead of teaching us science on Fridays, he would teach us, he would read us science fiction stories. And he would punctuate them with little oil paintings of the stories that he had all painted because he was a painter as well. And he was just every Friday we would listen to these wonderful stories, and he'd show us his pictures, and it just instilled in me just this love of reading and science fiction and storytelling. And one of our assignments at the end of the class was we were to write our own science fiction story and turn it into a publisher. And so every one of us
in high school,
in junior high.
In junior high. Oh my gosh! So I wrote in middle school.
Yep. So I wrote this little story about electronic devices that all of a sudden started attacking their owners. And I still remember the first line. It was this guy looks at this toaster and says, "These things hate me." That was the first line of my very first story.
As we all have said about small appliances at some point in our lives.
Yeah, so I turned it in. I sent it into Asimov's, but they didn't accept it. Maybe if I told them I was a 15-year-old or something, maybe I would have. Yeah. Maybe it would have a difference. But anyway, ever since then, I've loved writing and science fiction, and I've read all the great classic science fiction novels throughout my youth and in my days, and Johnny Apocalypse just kind of like sprang up from all my love of science fiction and post-apocalyptic fun and adventure, so.
Do you have a hands-down favorite science fiction author? Other than yourself?
I would say, let's see, that would be a cross between probably Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov.
Oh, so very classic. Oh, yeah. Very classic. Oh.
Ray Bradbury is such a good poet as well as his stories just are like poetry,
They are very lyrical. I completely agree with that.
His Dandelion Wine and some of those stories are illustrated manner just so well done. It's just such good writing that it's something to shoot for, to try to emulate.
I feel like the lyricism in Asimov's work in particular, though I'm not putting down Bradbury, is so different than the action, adventure, fast-paced stuff that I think so many folks think science fiction is.
Right.
Science fiction can actually, as you well know, can be very beautiful, sensual, lyrical, just rich and very full, sensory full, but also, I think, obviously thought-provoking. I think that's one stereotype about science fiction that people do know, is that it is going to make you think. Good sci-fi is going to make you think.
Well, one thing I like about Isaac Asimov is even though he was obviously a genius, he was able to write so that everybody could enjoy his books.
Yeah.
No matter, they weren't written in such scientific language that only eggheads really could understand them, but everybody can read and enjoy his books, which I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. No, that's also very true. They're accessible.
Yeah, they're accessible.
Yeah, anyone can pick them up.
Right, and yet they're very intelligent and very
Yes.
and very well written.
Let's see, multi-layered.
Yes.
See, now we're just using all those words that we want reviewers to use for our own work, but it's true. It is true.
Yeah,
all right,
true.
so let's see. I like that. That's a good entry to the life and career of. I like that. So on Speak, we often ask artisans some of the same questions about big issues in the industry. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel there's a right or wrong answer. I just want your take on this. Uh-huh. So one of our big issues today is bricks and mortar versus online bookstores. Now, the reason that I say online versus bricks and mortar instead of online versus real life is I wonder, are online bookstores simply an evolution of the market? Is it really one or the other? They're all real life. We're getting a real book.
Right.
But what is your take on this? And where do you, when you are ready to read a book, when you hear about a book and you buy it, where do you buy your books?
I tell you, when you first go into a real bookstore, there's just that mass of wonderful books everywhere, just all these adventures just calling to you. And there's that feel and that just that special smell and just experience of a bookstore. And when you walk down a particular aisle, like the science fiction aisle, there's all these beautiful colored backs of these books and different sizes and different everything. And there's just so much adventure there, just calling to you. And just like when you go online, you're kind of like controlled by Amazon's like their choice of the first 10, the best 10 books.
You can't really browse.
Right, and most of those are because those people just happen. They might be also because they're really good, but also because they just happen to have gotten more reviews than some of the other books. But if you go into a brick and mortar store, you might find a book that for some reason wasn't on Amazon's 10 best list, but is a really wonderful, enjoyable book.
Yeah.
And you can pick it up. You can look at the back. You can see it. And you can get a feel of what that book's like, and it's just so much more enjoyable than just clicking. I mean, I for one, and spend so much time on the computer. I don't. When I go to look for a book, I want to go to a bookstore where I can look at it and look at all the shelf and just see all the wonderful books there.
What's your feeling about chain stores and corporate stores with paid placement, where publishers pay to have 2 to 5 copies on the shelves or on an end cap? Are you for it or against it?
I think I don't know if that it depends on if the reader comes in there and likes that book. I mean, that's fine, but there's also all these other books from people who are have just as fun adventures that they can
Absolutely.
Look at.
Yeah.
And you still, when you go into a brick and mortar, you can still find the bestsellers there. But you also have a choice of looking at a bunch of other books
and older titles.
Yeah, and books that might be really wonderful books, but just haven't had that chance because they just can't get on the Amazon Best 10 list, and yet they're still wonderful books.
Right. Yeah.
So
used bookstores, you like them?
I love used bookstores. It's just, in fact, I'm the type of person who likes to go to like estate sales, and I like to find a book from the 1930s. That's like, this is maybe the last copy that anybody will ever read. Because it's just so obscure. Like I have one book that's from the 1930s I bought that at a estate sale. It's this woman, I don't know the title right at the moment, but she wrote about this girl's experience on a wagon train coming west. And it was just a wonderful little book about her and how she finds this husband, and they start a life on the frontier, and it's just like from 1930s. And part of the fun of it is just thinking that maybe I'm the last person to ever read her book. This is somebody's dream. Somebody wrote this and put their heart into it, and now it's kind of like so old. Maybe I'm the last person reading it. So it's just kind of a neat.
It's like the journey of.
Right. It's like finding this treasure that might be lost.
Otherwise,
and you get to find it and read it, so.
I talk with so many authors who are just so down on used bookstores, and they're like, well, I don't get paid for that copy. It can sell 27 more times, and I'm like, yes, And it's going to sell to people that, by and large, are not going to have the money to keep up with their own book habit, their own reading habit. So that buying it used is how they can afford to read as much as they do.
Well, I would personally love to be like Stephen King and have people read and reread and reread my books because I love them so much.
Oh, absolutely. Are you a rereader yourself?
I am. I read. In fact, I have a copy of The Illustrated Man right now that I'm rereading, yeah, because it's just the stories are so fun,
Do you come back to stories, do you wait several years, or is it, how do you find yourself rereading?
Usually just when the spirit hits me.
Inspiration.
Right.
I really like to, I love that. That's totally
think
valid.
about it and think, hey, I'd like to reread that again,
Oh, I love that. That's a very good answer.
Right.
That's a very good answer.
I hope that's the way it is with Johnny Apocalypse for people.
Yes. No one should be turning in their Johnny Apocalypses to a used bookstore because they definitely stand up to multiple reads. Speaking of multiple reads, okay, so we're talking about, and I love how you talked about the sheer numbers at Amazon. I'm asking you, how do you feel about paid space in corporate and chain stores? And, but let's talk about, how do you feel about the fact that in America alone, there are more than 600,000, so more than 500,000 manuscripts published either by a publishing house or self-published every year. That's in America alone.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So you're absolutely right. One of the things that help a book stand out, whether it's self-published or not, with an independent press or even with a corporate press, is comments and reviews from our readers who purchase the book on Amazon. So hopefully they do, because then you've got that wonderful verified purchase. So you're hoping that someone has, most likely read the book before they're reviewing it, as opposed to a glowing review by someone that has been unfortunately paid to do so.
Or just really likes you and wants to do something nice for you.
Yes, which you know what? I figure, heck, that's fine. What do you feel distinguishes you and Johnny Apocalypse from the other, not the 600,000 other books in the world, but rather from like other older teen, neo-YA dystopian? What is the difference?
I think Johnny Apocalypse is just a really fun adventure. Johnny, he has kind of like been cloistered his family and friends for 100 years in a mall, and he's like opening up into a brand new world that they don't know anything about because they've been locked kind of like in superstition and in this mall. And so it's kind of like a fun story of a whole new world they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And yet it's a world that's been destroyed by nuclear war, and yet it has all this old history and things that they know nothing about. And it's just a fun adventure of them exploring this world. It's really a new world to them. So.
Mm-hmm. So you're not making a big political statement, like for instance, Hunger Games or Maze Runner. You're literally like, let's have an adventure. What if ...
Right. Yeah, Johnny Apocalypse is just a fun adventure. What happens if you were born in a world where there's a nuclear war and you're just been in this place for 100 years, and now all of a sudden you have to emerge into this world that you know nothing about, and you don't even know who's out there, or what dangers you're going to face, what creatures, what weird situations, or even what's even out there, So it's just kind of a fun adventure.
Tell folks about one of the cool naming conventions that you do in the book. I actually think that was such an authentic little gem. Because it's not like you go into, this vast naming exposition, but you do a really cool thing. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Johnny and his friends live in an old abandoned mall. So Mr. Wizard, Johnny's friend, he is the person who knows a little bit more about the history and about science than a lot of the people there. So in order to encourage them to learn to read, he has taken the names for all the children that he helps bear, and he gives them the names of the places in the mall. So they're like, one will be named Sharper Image, and one will be named, Johnny's best friend is named Starbucks, they're just kind of different names from the mall, that kind of like,
and to the kids, the kids don't know. The kids are like, Starbucks isn't a coffee place, Sharper Image isn't electronics.
That's just their name,
I like that. I think what I love about that is it shows kind of not effortless. You work hard to write. Or I don't know any writer who finds writing effortless, but for the reader, it was an effortless little reminder that look how different this world is. Like you could almost say the word Starbucks to almost within reason anyone in the world right now, and they'd be like, oh, the coffee place.
Right.
But to these kids, that's how divorced, how removed from our world they are.
Right. They have no idea what a Starbucks was or is or...
Yeah.
I mean, in their world is their mall where they live and their traditions and their superstitions, and nothing from the old world even they have a clue about. So other than Johnny, who actually, Mr. Wizard is kind of like helping him to learn some of the past, but the rest of them, it's all mystery to them.
And how old is Johnny?
He's 15.
Okay. So have you heard, it's interesting that I keep hearing this repeated again and again and again. It doesn't even seem to go out of fashion. And it especially comes to me from distributors and from regional buyers. And they say, okay, how old is the main character? 15. All right, so that's going to be read by 12 to 15-year-olds, because younger children, young adults, like to read books about folks that are just a little bit older. It's almost as if they want that sneak peek into what's right around the corner for them.
Right.
But what I have loved about the Johnny Apocalypse that you have shared with me in the past is that you get a lot of adults buying the books, especially soldiers.
Yeah. A lot of it's really just a book for anybody who likes fun, adventure, science fiction.
Yeah.
And I get quite a few 20-ish year old kids who really, guys who really like it because it's a fun science fiction adventure.
Mm-hmm. And you don't dumb it down.
No.
It's not like you're like, oh yes, I'm writing the vocabulary of a 12-year-old, which I think is so ridiculous, because in this day and age, I could have a 12-year-old sitting across from me right here, depending on what he or she does, what they create, if they're an artisan, if they're an athlete, whatever it is, they could talk circles around me, even though I've been in the industry for almost 40 years.
Right.
It's interesting how intense Gen Z can be.
All right, and kids are really smart now, and they really can.
Yeah.
And ones who are good readers can read really well, and so you don't really have to do any dumbing down of anything for them.
And in terms, talk to me about, I found something else interesting when I was just kind of prepping for the interview today. For your 3 Johnnies, they're not exact, but they're similar in length. Do you find when you're writing that you wind up tying things up, roughly the same word count, or how do you approach length of a work?
Let's see. I think I just kind of plan out what's going to happen, and just kind of probably just keep writing it until I get to. I think I'm getting near to that length, and then think, okay, now it's a place to cut it off for the next book.
Which is totally fair. But you said you plan. Do you do a formal outline?
Usually I do a formal outline of at least the main events in my book, so that I know where I'm going, but then I can just fill it in with whatever happens and fun things.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you do that for short stories as well?
I do, mostly, yeah. Usually I have my short story pretty much planned out before I...
Now I have to ask, though. It was Leo, right? The teacher?
Leo, yeah.
For Leo, did you learn that in his class? Or when did you start outlining?
I've just taken over time. I've learned how to do book writing and story writing from just reading and studying and things, and just pretty much understanding how especially in a short story you have a really short arc, and you have to grab the reader right from the start.
Yeah.
And then have the story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a satisfactory end. So it's just learning just pretty much story outline, story arc.
I've talked with authors who say they don't outline at all. They literally just write. I've talked to authors who say they outline, but then the characters tell them that they want to go in a different direction. And I put that in air quotes not to ridicule author, but they're not literally hearing a voice. They're just like, it was very clear to me that the character wanted to go in this direction. Can you think of a time when you deviated from an outline and why that happened, or?
Just pretty much when I'm planning out a story, that'll happen.
Okay.
I think maybe different types of books are easier to do that than like adventure books. You pretty much, at least seems to me, you need to know at least somewhere where it's going. Whereas a fantasy book, I think you can go a little bit more off the beaten path and.
Yeah, like see where this takes us, little mini adventures. We're going to fight a dragon over here. We're going to meet some elves over here. Right. And now everyone who writes fantasy is going to hate me for that comment. But that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, I like that. All right, so let me see here. I've taken us on many a bird walk already. But so I mean, I feel like we did already actually cover this. Is that I wanted to talk to you about like the other books that I think if someone. I don't know if you agree with me, Mark, but most of the authors that I run into, they hate it when I say, who are your comps, which is a real estate term, right? You know, who are the not your competitors, your peers within your genre. And I mean, with dystopian, like Johnny Apocalypse, you can do absolutely nothing to escape being put on the shelf with Hunger Games, Maze Runner, Divergent, all of those.
Right.
But again, I think what's interesting is that you unabashedly say, these are adventures. This is not fight the machine, overthrow the government, any of this kind of thing. And you also really explore just Johnny. Right. Talk about coming of age when you're not just becoming a grown adult, but leaving somewhere where you've been cloistered. Right. And your people have been cloistered for 100 years. Right. That's interesting.
There's an interesting, Johnny has to step up and he has to take charge when the leadership of his tribe is not really leading the people where they need to go. Johnny has to find a way to take on that mantle himself and have the courage to step up and say, hey, we need to change, we need to do this instead.
When you were writing the Johnnies, was there someone you had in mind as your ultimate reader, or were you writing for the younger you, or what was it?
I think I was just writing for anybody who likes fun adventures, or for young adults who really like a good adventure story, and pretty much anybody who likes fun post-apocalyptic adventure,
Yeah, it's like an author without an agenda. My goodness, except enjoy.
Right, my agenda is just to be a storyteller and have a story that people really enjoy,
I like that. And I don't want to embarrass you. I know we're here to talk about your books, but I know you're also involved in film. Are there other creative industries that you're stirring those pots?
I'm also a screenwriter. I've written some screenplays that I'm working on. A couple of them won some minor awards, but
an award is an award.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, and I think screenwriting, actually, my short story writing helped me to do screenplays because it has the same thing where you have 120 pages and you have to have that story arc, and writing short stories kind of helps you learn to do that, to create that arc, in a certain amount of time. You have to grab the reader's attention right from the start of a screenplay, just like you do a short story, and carry them on that story.
Absolutely.
Arc, so.
Do you have a favorite filmmaker?
Let's see. Favorite filmmaker? I think Ron Howard's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, his stories are just so well written. Steven Spielberg, of course, he's a good movie maker. He's really good at that. And let's see. I think those are the two. I'm kind of drawing a little bit of blank.
I think those are two. I think Ron Howard is an absolutely exceptional answer, and I think that a lot of people. They do. I think he sometimes gets overlooked when people are saying, my favorite person or a very influential person. I think that he does work that it maybe isn't always these massive budget blockbuster films, but they're films that wind up in people's libraries.
Right.
Their personal life, not their community library rather, but their home libraries.
Right.
And I think that's really valid.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like what I like to do is is create a story that people cherish, and
Yeah.
that's what I hope Johnny Apocalypse is,
It is. I cherish it. I know I cherish it. I really love it. I get teased a lot at work because when I was working temporarily as in submission acquisition, all I wanted to say yes to was science fiction because I just love it so much. And what I call new YA or neo YA, like Johnny. So in other words, YA, it doesn't dumb down. It's not, such a tight perspective that that an adult can't also enjoy it. When I first read just the opening chapter of Johnny Apocalypse and the Nuclear Wasteland, book 1, I was just so struck by, I'm like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is, it may not have that insta hook. Like Hunger Games Maze Running, that's like, okay, let's talk about rising up against an oppressive government. Okay, let's talk about completely changing a class system. This is like, come on, guys. You've had a big day at school, or you're already working an after-school job, and you're coming home and you just want adventure.
Right.
And instead of snapping on something and watching a show, curl up with a book, or on the bus or wherever you're going to be that you could just read. And there's just something about that to me that was so incredibly appealing, is that here is an author writing a series, writing a story just for the love of it. He doesn't have an axe to grind. He just loves this character. He loves this world. And what if you had to build again? I love that. Now, we have talked about walking into a bookstore and browsing, and I completely agree with you on that. And we've also talked about digital browsing, for lack of a better term. When people are shopping online, they can do at Amazon, they can do the look inside. And in a bookstore, they can pick it up and look inside. And someone recently said to me, well, when I'm at a bookstore or I'm at Amazon, I always flip to a random page and read it. I have never done that in my life. I wouldn't want the spoiler. But I do see the point, because we're all working hard for our money, and books are very expensive, which I feel they should be, only because there are ways to get them less expensively, especially publishers that have a moral, ethical compass. Ebooks, I think, should be vastly priced very, very low, because I think, there's no manufacturing cost. Don't pretend there is. But for a trade paperback like this, $14.99, someone to drop that, I want to know they're going to love the book. You have a page that you're going to read for us today out of Johnny Apocalypse. And what I loved is I asked you when you first got here, I said, Mark, you feel comfortable? You've got your one page? And you answered me instantly. What are you going to read for us today?
I'm going to read the very first page of Johnny Apocalypse.
And I just thought that, I don't think that was an arrogant move. I thought that was a truthful and authentic move, to just be like, this is it. I feel so strong. And Mark and I talked about, I think it was Stephen King that I first heard say it, was, if you don't throw out your first chapter, are you even writing, or something, something roughly along those lines. It was years and years and years ago. But what I loved is that it was very clear to me when this manuscript came in, this was a very, very polished opener. And I loved that. All right, so this is Johnny Apocalypse and the Nuclear Wasteland. This is your sneak peek, everybody.
The elders of the tribe tell tales of the days when war came, and the mushroom monsters filled the sky with fire and smoke. Cities melted into piles of rubble. People turned to ash or into ghost shadows on the walls. Metal melted like hot wax. Almost all who lived during those times died. Then to those who were still left came the sickness. Many developed terrible sores and died. Babies were born deformed or missing arms or legs, or even worse, looking like monsters. Now, 100 years later, only a few survivors remain. Nature has reclaimed the empty gray ribbons where men once drove their metal machines, and twisted skeletons of steel where men lived. Beasties run in the streets now, rat beasties and dog beasties and other beasties larger and fiercer. Next to one of the abandoned, decaying cities stands a group of one-story square buildings huddled together as if for protection. The buildings are surrounded by a sea of flat, cracked, and broken stone men once called concrete. The concrete is littered with rusted hulks of steel that men once used to call cars. The buildings were once called a shopping mall. Now the tribe of humans living there in the dark, dirty interior who make it their home call it simply sanctuary.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm just gonna completely stand by my my initials. I think that was, well, and to be honest, it was that opener that got this series published.
Right.
You know, and I think what is so vital. You're very welcome. I think what is so vital, because it's not just the opener, you guys. You can't just write a good opener and expect to be published. But
right.
I think that for me, it was just so clear. It was painted with such strokes that I immediately was like, okay, I know where we are. And also, more importantly, maybe, I know where we're not. We're not in Kansas anymore. We are not in modern times anymore. We are not in our timeline.
Right. And
to feel that immediately. And also, I like, you use words like beasties, you go far, it was concrete, but still, I don't feel like you're saying, as a kiddo,
right.
Anyone would, I don't think, you haven't alienated your adult readers or something like that.
Right.
Mark, we have a little bit more time.
Uh-huh.
Is there something, just any topic at all that you'd like to talk about today?
I'd like to talk about writing is my passion, and I really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to writing the next Johnny Apocalypse book, which hopefully will be coming out within the next 3 or 4 months.
Fantastic. Book 4. Do you have a title?
Yeah, I do. It's called Johnny Apocalypse and the King of New York.
Yes. All right.
So you can kind of guess where Johnny's might be heading.
To Alabama, obviously. Oh, no, to New York. Okay. All right. Cool.
To the ruins of New York. So hopefully it'll be a really fun, exciting adventure there. So.
Where does the series begin? Where is it located in the beginning?
It's located in Philadelphia to begin with.
Okay.
And I don't want to.
I don't want
what happens,
but there is an epic journey that does take place.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys, you can find all of Mark's books at blueforgepress.com or amazon.com, or walk into any bookseller and demand them, because all of the books are available, even if they are through special order. And bookstores need to know to carry more books. Maybe they can't, bricks and mortar stores can't carry 600,000 novels, but I think they could maybe give a little shelf space to more independent authors that are with smaller and nonprofit presses. But thank you for appearing on Speak today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's been a wonderful experience.
And I don't want to embarrass you, but I am going to say, if someone out there watching this has read one of the Johnny Apocalypse books, or all 3, and you have not gone and commented and written a little review, it doesn't have to be extensive. Just be honest. You don't have to sound like a New York book reviewer. Just say whether or not you liked the book and maybe who your favorite character was, and do it. Post it at Amazon, because those reviews help drive a book up in the rankings, which means it shows up in the search engine results. Oh, you guys, the alchemy of online book sales. So help Mark out. Go on over there. He put in all the time to write these incredible books. The least we can all do is take 10 minutes. I am Mark's publisher, so I can't get through the Amazon system, but you guys can. You guys can, and they are definitely worth a review. Thank you, Mark.
Sure welcome.
Science fiction has long been a vehicle where authors can explore massive, controversial issues, societal problems, things that truly need light shed on them so that they can be changed. But that's not all that science fiction is. Science fiction can also be a great adventure story and escape to another place, or a coming-of-age story. I honestly feel there's room in the world for all of these stories, and there's room in science fiction. Thank you for joining us today on Speak. Speak is brought to you by the 501c3 nonprofit Blue Legacy and made possible in part by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Washington Arts Commission. Want to appear on Speak? Maybe you have a question that you'd like us to ask future artisans? Write to us at blueforgefilms@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
This was my first book interview, but Jennifer was such a great host. She made me feel comfortable and at ease, and she just was a joy to talk to, and she made the whole thing just a pleasure. Thank you, Jennifer, for being such a great host.